Jay Scherr.
Jay Scherr.
Jay Scherr.
Jay Scherr,
business consultant.
Jay Scherr.
Jay Scherr Business Consulting.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jay Scherr with Jay Scherr Business Consulting. We help entrepreneurs, business owners, and leaders maximize their potential, build rock-solid foundations for their businesses, and create more freedom in their lives. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. John Wooden said, "Success comes from knowing that you did your best to become the best that you are capable of becoming." On today's episode, we talk about success principles and becoming our best, embracing change and overcoming challenges, mindset, qualities of a dream team, the gold standard, and more. My guest is a wife and mother of three, a three-time Olympic gold medalist with USA softball, a two-time world champion, a National Softball Hall of Fame inductee, and a three-time national champion at the University of Arizona. Go Wildcats! She's an author, motivational speaker, a college softball analyst with ESPN and Westwood One Sports, and host of the top-rated podcast, The Gold Standard. Please welcome the woman who's helping us unlock our potential so we can thrive in any situation, Leah Amico. Leah, it is so great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
I'm so excited to be here on this podcast with you, Jay, and just to share with everyone wisdom and knowledge that came through experiences, not only from a softball field, but well beyond that, the things, the core things of the gold standard that have helped me to be able to be involved in so many different aspects of career fields and to still thrive. So can't wait to share.
Oh, I am so looking forward to this. And I want to just share with you that, before we hit record, we were having a brief conversation. But the thing that I didn't mention to you was that in researching you and listening to some of your podcasts, some of the podcasts that you've been a guest on and consuming some of your content, you're so inspiring and you're so real and authentic the way that you come across, such an amazing personality. And I know that has already come through. I can tell our listeners can already hear that in your voice. And for those that are, if you're not watching this, I would also encourage you to check out the video version of this, because you're going to see that personality and that light shine through Leah's eyes and just her body language. So I wanted to just share that with you because I get that sense from you, Leah, almost right off the bat. So I'm super excited to dive right in and get to know you even better. So I thought a good starting point for us would be to share a bit about your backstory. But here's what I would love it if you could focus on as you're sharing some of that story. What are some of the early experiences that you had that have shaped the person who you've become?
Well, first and foremost, support from my family. My parents, they enjoyed sports. My dad, loved baseball. I grew up in Southern California, huge Dodgers fan. He didn't have a lot of support from his parents, from his dad. And so he had this daughter. I was the firstborn. And I was very tomboyish and loved to be outside and active and just aggressive. And so they signed me up for softball and soccer. And so right off the bat, I had support. I had people who gave me opportunities. I would say that I was very competitive from a young age. I wanted to win. And I just didn't shy away from that. I was willing to go get what I wanted. I look at, think about myself in soccer. And I say this because I've raised three boys and my middle son is the most, I'd say, naturally athletic, but I'd watch him in soccer and I'm like, why is he so tentative? Why is he holding back? Like that's the opposite of what I was. So that competitiveness and then, I really think at a young age, and I've seen this throughout my entire life, I really believe that I thrive best in team environments. Like I work best with others. I am not that person that's like, nope, I want to be alone. I'm going to do it on my own. Like that is not me. And so I look back how I was involved in a team sport, and I've thought this as an Olympian. I've watched some of these and I know Michael Phelps is a swimmer, right? He still has a team of people that help him, his coaches and the supporting staff, but he's out there on his own. And I remember thinking, no, I am a team person. I am so glad that when I stood on that podium, I was up there with 14 other women. So I think those three things, that support system, that competitiveness, and then being surrounded by team, like I really believe those are core things to this day that like work in my life.
Beautiful. So I want to go back then for a moment to talk about that competitiveness, that competitive spirit that you've had. Give us an example, if you will, of a time in your early youth where you discovered and felt that competitiveness. What was that like for you? And can you point back to a very specific example when you recognized this particular trait about yourself?
Well, the first story that pops up, and it's funny, I don't have a ton. I've like just a few memories like of certain points. But when you say this, I think I was about 10 years old on an all-star team and I was a pitcher. Started taking pitching lessons when I was 8 years old. And oh, like that was it, like next level. I get to have the ball in my hand, right? And I want to lead my team to win, And we're in a tournament and I'm young and this umpire is not calling strikes, but I think they're strikes. So in between innings, I went off and I wiped the dirt off the corner of the plate just to give the umpire a better look at where the corner is and how this ball is hitting the corner. And so I think back, could you imagine now? I'm like, if I see a little kid do that, I'm be like, you little brat, but but I was like, "No, that is a strike and you need to understand this, umpire." So that type of stuff and it's just this idea of like, "No, like we're gonna win, but I cannot have somebody working against me. We gotta figure this out." And so I wanted to win tournaments that we would play in, like it's like that's when I rose up to be my best when more was at stake. And I saw that throughout my career, which eventually led me to becoming an Olympian.
I love that. So you talk about teamwork and being in a team environment, and that's an area where you thrive, something that you thoroughly enjoy. When you think about being part of a team, do you see yourself, or when you're in a team role, do you see yourself as a leader in a team environment? What role do you feel like you can excel best at when working with teams?
Okay, so I think it depends on the situation. I feel like I look back through my athletic career, I look back through even just after sports and, in different career areas that I've been. And depending on what is available, who I'm with, I can mold. I can become that follower who comes underneath. So I think back to myself making the Olympic team. And now I'm 21 years old and our oldest player is 34 and there's these women with a lot of experience, right? So in that sense, like, okay, I'm going to lead by example each day, but in terms of like the experience and what I need to learn, like I'm going to fall under like their leadership in a sense from within the team. Continued playing and our team in 2000 Olympics, we lost 3 games. We were on the verge of like not even competing for a medal and being kicked out before the medal round if we lost another game. And in that sense, although we still had veterans, women who were still older than me, I just remember in that aspect of just having things that I want to share with the team in those tough moments. I was the one that kind of joined us together, and sometimes in the faith aspect of just kind of bringing people back to perspective that our identity is not found on the field, but it's in who we are, and let's be our best so we can come back to that and not feel so much pressure in the weight of the world. This is a game, kind of just like again that purpose and that focus. So I feel like I will step up and rise up. And then obviously my last Olympics, I was one of the older players and we had a lot of these younger ones. So my goal was to let them feel as comfortable. Different environments in terms of if I'm doing TV work for commentating, my role, I know my role. And I think that's the biggest thing. That's what I would say to you, Jay. I like to know what is my role? What is the expectation of me? And when you make that clear, I am going to go all in. So sometimes I am the leader. Other times I might be the one like following, but I have no problem stepping up and speaking when it's needed, making my voice heard and sharing what I believe can make a difference in a group setting.
Interesting. So speaking about leadership and sometimes being a follower, as well as being able to step into that leadership role. As you look over your career and today, as you think about those who are some of the best leaders that you've been around, that just exemplify excellence in leadership, what are some of those characteristics that you see that you've tried to bring into your own life and exhibit yourself day in, day out?
Okay, so number one, I would say servant leadership. I would say leading by example and setting the standard. So when you have a standard of excellence and you're leading other people, you need to live in a way that shows excellence. When you set rules, I see this even at a young level. My son being like, "Mom, it's okay if we're a little bit late because the coach is always 30 minutes late." And I'm like, "Whoa!" Like that's the opposite. I cannot tell you one time that my college coach, who became my Olympic coach, Mike Candrea, he to me is the ultimate leader. Not one day I can't tell you that he wasn't there before every one of us and worked harder than every one of us and led us. And because of his standard of excellence, every one of us rose up to ourselves. That's number one. Number two, he led us and looked at us and coached us as people before athletes when I played, or it should be people before employees. So that aspect of caring about us and just really seeing us and then seeing our own strengths within that. So when you see people as individuals, it's not a cookie cutter approach. Every single he was the last thing from that. Some teams, some coaches, it's like everybody has to play this way, and he was like, "What is your strength? I'm gonna use that." And then number three, belief. You have to believe in yourselves. I always say people can believe in you, they can't believe for you, but I had a lot of belief in myself, but when my coach, who set very high demands and expectations, had a belief as well, this was his thing for us. He said, "I don't want you ever to get too high or too low." He kept us honest. When we got too prideful or arrogant, he'd bring us down a notch. But when we were down, he was the first one to pick us up. And so that belief that he added, I'm telling you, we could take on the world. I felt like playing for him. I was the best version of myself. And I was able to reach the highest heights. When I won my first Olympic gold medal, he wasn't the Olympic coach yet. He coached me in my last Olympic games, my third one. He was at our game in the stands. And I went over to him and I gave him a big hug. And I just said, "I need to thank you for all of this," with tears in my eyes, because I knew playing for him for 3 years led me to that Olympic team.
So, Leah, we're talking about belief here, and I want to stay on that topic for just a moment because it's such a critical aspect of everything that we do. When I think about those that are watching and listening right now, there's a lot in the entrepreneurial space that are in the business space in general. And anytime we try something new, anytime we create a new product, a new service, creating a new business as an example, that sense of belief is so critically important to be able to keep us moving forward. So we believe in what we're doing. We believe that we have the ability, the capabilities, the strength to be able to move forward, right, through any situation, any adversity. So let's stay on the topic of belief for a moment and speak about how, from your perspective, from what you've learned from coaches and others that you've surrounded yourself with, how can we develop a stronger belief system in ourselves if that's an area that we're challenged with?
I think it's important to show up every day and to do the work. And through that consistency, I believe confidence gets built. I think when you are willing to learn, when you're willing to grow, when you're willing to step out of your comfort zone, I would say you want to build belief, you have to first be willing to fail and try something new. Because what happens is when you try it, okay, if I make a mistake, I learned something. Okay, wait, but try it again. And you start to grow. And all of a sudden, there's a little more confidence the next time. The first time, you might have to do something with no confidence, with no belief. If you don't know what you don't know. Before you experience it, before I went and did my first speaking engagement, my first time on television commentating a softball game, now I've told myself, expect the first time I do anything to be terrible. I can't build belief like if I don't know something. See, I think about myself as an Olympian. Well, of course, by that time I had a lot of belief. I had a lot of failures, a lot of learning, a lot of growth, a lot of successes that I pulled from. So I would say you got to start every day doing whatever it is you're working towards. Consistency is key. That word consistency, to me, I would say is the most important. I believe any person that I have seen do anything, I don't care what career field, I don't care what type of athlete, singer, I don't know, actress, actor, whatever it is, consistency. When you do that every time you're building more confidence, more courage, more experience, more understanding. And through that, belief will be infused. And, there's some things we might try. I tried basketball in junior high. Didn't matter how much I believed. I was not good at it. I'm sure I could have gotten a little bit better, but it clearly was not my strength. But softball, it clearly was, because from a young age, I was having a lot of success and I absolutely loved it. And so I'd say that number one. And then the other thing I just want to add in, when belief is tied with like your purpose, like if you like feel like, no, I know I'm supposed to be doing this, but man, I really struggle. I don't believe like I maybe have what other people are doing or what I'm seeing from others. Then just know like, but if I feel like I'm really like supposed to do this, if it really it's tied to like a purpose for my life, then again, keep showing up, keep going, because it is that consistency. And over time, your belief will be built. Let me just share one little thing my coach had said to me. I called him up. This is my college coach again, who eventually became my Olympic coach. It was just before my second Olympics, and I was really struggling offensively. And so I gave him a phone call. I'm in this parking lot of this softball field and just, discouraged. And I call him up and I'm just like talking to him about what happened. And he says to me, Leah, he says, your ability to succeed at this level, it's the highest level in our sport, it's going to depend on how well you deal with failure. When you can understand that you're going to use failure as a way to learn and grow, and if you can take that, if it beats you up, you're probably not going to do as well at this level. So just take it for what it is, learn from it, and move on. And that's where I feel like those truths and those reminders that helped to build my belief overall.
So good. So good. You had mentioned the words comfort zone a moment or two ago, and I wanted to ask you about that. We've heard the phrase that growth happens outside the comfort zone or outside our comfort zones, which I truly believe that. But I'm curious, as you look at what you're doing today with the success that you've had, with the challenges that you've faced, with the hard work that you've put in, that you continue to put in, what is something that you are either doing today or is on your radar to push you beyond your current comfort zone? Because I also believe that our comfort zones continue to move, right? As we have more life experiences, as we continue to grow, as we do things day in, day out and build that confidence and that competence. What are you doing today to push yourself beyond your comfort zone?
Okay, well, I am right in the middle of being outside of my comfort zone right now. I actually have hired a coach recently. I've spoken for probably 20 years, but I'm wanting to take it to another level. I've just, through the years been available. I was raising my boys as a homeschool mom for 13 years. I did commentating, wrote a couple of books, did some speaking, did some softball stuff through the years, but it was just everybody would approach me and I would say yes, and it would lead to more opportunities. So I knew there's obviously a talent there and a connection in a sense that, people were having me come back. People were saying, oh, passing my name along as a speaker. But I knew, okay, now my boys are in high school. I have more free time. What do I want to do? I want to go more into this area. And so I knew the only way to do that was to try to connect with somebody who is doing that, right? Finding somebody who is where I want to go. And so about 4 months ago, I hired it. Well, let me tell you, this phrase that we always said as athletes was get comfortable being uncomfortable is literally what I'm living out. I'm going to tell you right now, the wrestling and the emotional like ups and downs, my husband going, are we really back there again? Because he's the one that's going to hear like I can't do this, and he's like, yes, you can. And those moments, like he's the one when I would call coach, right? Or I call a friend who I know is in the business world and I'd be like, but what if I share this? And so what's happening is I have always shared and I've shared many different ways. And I have obviously some core pieces to my story. But what this is taking me and causing me to do is it's a different way of sharing my story that I've never done before. And it's having more of a strategy and having more of a structure in the way that I do it, because in the past, I probably just go up and, let me use a softball term, I would just swing freely. And now it's like, oh, no, you're going to know exactly how to hit the curve ball and the rise ball and the drop ball, because we're going to perfect this. And so right now, I'm meeting with a coach on a regular basis, and he's giving me homework, and it is very stretching and it's been really hard. But I keep telling myself, and I experienced this on the softball field, on the other side of hard is going to be amazing new opportunities.
So very good. So you've hit on a couple of things there that I want to tug on some strings. One is that you mentioned that you were saying yes to opportunities. And I've heard you talk about saying yes and looking for the opportunities, and one opportunity can lead to the next, et cetera, and always being open to new opportunities. When it comes to saying yes, in my experience, I happen to be a recovering people pleaser, and I was saying yes to everything. And like you, my eyes are always open to the opportunity and often creating opportunities. But I found, Leah, that I was saying yes to so many things where I did not understand my own boundaries. I hadn't established very specific boundaries around my time, around my business, around spirituality, around personal growth, all these different areas, finances, et cetera. And as a result of that, by saying yes to too many things, I didn't have the bandwidth to be able to focus on the things that actually were most important to me and those that I serve. So my question to you is, today, how do you determine, first, are you clear on the boundaries that you set for yourself? And number two, what are you saying yes and no to? And why is that important?
Well, I completely relate to everything you're saying. And I will say that I probably experienced that the last year and a half or so, where I learned early on, I was calling a bunch of people, making a lot of connections. I was having a lot of people contact me. I was saying yes, like I said, for a lot of times it kind of always worked out and my schedule made sense. But now all of a sudden I was being bombarded, and I realized, whoa, exactly what you said. I could be on 20 calls a week, but how many of those calls are really in the direction that I'm trying to go? How many of them are just pulling me away, distracting me, time wasters? And so I would probably say about 4 months ago was when, okay, I really need to, like you just mentioned, really have boundaries and decide, how am I going to use up my time wisely? So I would say I only recently, in the probably last year and a half, I needed to do that, but it was a learning process, right? And like you said, I also am a people pleaser, but I also know you can't get there. When I was playing softball, that time was blocked out every single day for softball practice, right? Every single day was put aside. And I realized, okay, this is different. When I was training as an Olympian, I had to figure out my schedule and what mattered most, and especially as a mom in my last Olympics. And so I now say yes to things that are going to point me in the right direction, maybe connections, people. And then secondly, I sometimes I really want to put people above. Sometimes I have this time that I'm trying to protect. But for instance, a friend's father passed away recently, and it was a day that I really had some stuff planned. But I was like, you and I were talking before we started recording about priorities. And sometimes our priorities change quickly and unexpectedly. So I took an entire day and was like, I'm going to see my friend, because me just showing up is going to mean something to her probably the rest of her life. And that matters more right now in this moment than some of these other things that I needed to get done. I will do those a little bit later. So I'm really trying to prioritize what you said. The word for me is priorities. What is the most important thing? And those things that are lower priorities or not a necessity, I'm really trying to start to take out of my schedule. And that just might be sometimes some fun times that I had planned, but no, I'll save those fun times for a weekend when I'm not trying to get certain things accomplished.
So let's say that you're sitting across from someone right now who is telling you that everything is important. You know, I'm building this business, or I'm starting this new venture, and Leah, everything that I'm doing is important, and I'm not quite sure how to establish priorities and how to set myself up so I can spend my time on the things that are most meaningful. Everything's important. How would you respond to that person?
I would probably say, number one, get a coach because they're going to help you see what your real priorities are. I just had this discussion with a good friend who everything is important and she's doing so many different things, but she's realizing that she is depleting herself. And just there is no balance, there is no time that she needs to fill her cup, and she's feeling so burned out there where she wants to completely walk away from everything. And we hear those stories. And then number two, I would encourage somebody, and I don't know, this might be different depending on roles and positions people have, but I have seen this. I would say build a team. Get people around you that you can add. If you're like, but this is so important, maybe there's somebody that can help you with that. One of the things for me, even as a speaker and entrepreneur and doing some different things, is I was talking to somebody and they asked me, well, who's on your team? And I knew, you have these people that are speakers, they're authors, but they didn't do it alone. And so I started realizing, who can I find? And over time, I've met a couple people that I would say are on my team. And they help me when I'm feeling overwhelmed. And I say, can I hand this over to you? And they do it. And then all of a sudden, it's shared work and it's probably better work. Because when you're feeling so depleted and you're like, I'm trying to juggle, I picture it, you're trying to juggle 20 balls. Go get 20 balls right now and try to juggle them and see what happens. Eventually, they're going to come crashing down. And so, with that, but if all of a sudden we spread those balls out to different people and we all start juggling, it's much more manageable. So, those are the two things that I would say. Somebody outside yourself, it might just be a friend. It might just be a friend having conversation and you're feeling like, no, they are. I can't give up anything. But then they help you to see, have you thought about it this way? Have you thought about it this way? Here's some options. And all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, okay, I hadn't seen it that way before.
Yeah, those two great pieces of advice there, and I would absolutely agree with you on both of those. Getting the right coach who can help give you some perspective, and I think to the point that you just made, we all have blind spots. We all do. We may not want to admit it, but the reality is we do. And often we are so myopically focused. We get into a situation and we're so close to it that we can't really pull the lens back and be able to get greater perspective and see where the gaps are, see that these things may not necessarily be a priority. If we focus on these things first, right, they may actually take care of these other things. And you've probably heard the saying, it's something that I think about often, that if everything's important, nothing's important, right? So we really have to hone in on those key priorities, understand the things that are going to move the needle, the things that align with your values, that align with your mission, and that align with your purpose, and focus on those things that truly do make a difference. So another thing that you said that I'm looking at, and I'm taking notes as we're going along here because you've shared so much great wisdom, and it was around it somewhat ties into belief as well, but it's around self-talk. So you were able to reach out to a coach when you were either doubting something or, can I do this, etc., right? Having a mentor, having a coach, having someone that you can have these types of conversations with. But when you are dealing with that chatter, that negative self-talk. And again, for all of you that are watching and listening right now, I know you have this too, right? I definitely do. We all do, right? So the question for you is, when you are experiencing that, when there's self-doubt, when you're questioning your own abilities, your talents, your skills, those sorts of things, how do you overcome that? What can you kind of walk us through a process that you take when you hear that negative chatter in your mind?
I I do a couple things. I would say first and foremost, I do try to talk to myself. I try to talk like truth to myself. Like, what is the truth? Okay, my feelings say this, but what is the truth? Right now, I might be a little discouraged, but the truth is I'm fully capable. Right now, this is really, really hard, but I know I have the ability to do this, so I just have to go through the hard. So I do try to talk to myself, and I laugh because working out, like, I've just been like, gosh, I've been so inconsistent this past year. Like, I'm going to do this, and I finally got on the tread or the elliptical machine and had a great workout. And afterwards, I literally was like, "Good job, Leah." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, I'm like, I think that's what I did as an athlete. I talked to myself, um, and I think just perspective. You mentioned that word. I think, you know, you have this perspective of what really, really matters. And when you go through hard times, and we all have different things personally and friends that we know who've gone through things, it kind of gives you, sometimes I just need to go back to the perspective of, okay, this, young girl who's a family friend has stage 4 liver cancer, and I see her as the most positive person ever. And it's like, okay, if she can sit here and come out each day to say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to beat this, and it's not even in her control, like, I can take control of what I'm thinking right now and having this perspective. And then I would say one other thing, and again, this goes back to I learned so much on the softball field, right? Before we would go to the Women's College World Series, or right at the World Series, we'd have this highlight video and we would watch our best plays. And that was like all these thoughts in our minds. And so what I think I try to do is remind myself of all these hard things that I've done, hard times I've overcome, past situations and experiences where, again, maybe I was feeling exactly the same way, but look at how it ended up turning out. And I try to remind myself of those past successes and think, okay, keep going, keep pressing on. Because I believe a lot of people get stopped, Jay. I believe they get stopped in that moment of discouragement, in that unbelief in themselves, fear of the unknown, fear of, failure, fear of what others are going to think or say. And they replay words in their minds, maybe from their childhood, of you're not good enough. You're not able to do this. You're not smart enough. I was just thinking the other day, I was thinking how, because I didn't love writing and English growing up, and I was good at math like had an answer. So I like to know the exact answer. I like to win, right? But language, it's like, I don't know, like, is the teacher going to like it or not like it? So I was realizing that I told myself all these years, like, I'm not creative. I'm just not creative. But then this past year, Rise and Record with Brandon T. Adams, in a group of amazing people, just met so many people the past year, who are entrepreneurs and have these great ideas. And when I got into a room with these people, I just felt my wheels spinning. And I was like, all of a sudden, I had all these ideas and thoughts. And I'm like, I am creative. I am creative. I've told myself that, but that is not the truth. So now, like, when that thought comes up, I'm like, oh no, I replaced it now from what I told myself when I was younger. So those are just some thoughts of what I go to, because we all have moments of doubts, but the difference is some people, for it's a moment, and others it becomes a mountain and gets in your way.
Wow, that is so, so good. And I just want to bolt on to something that you said that I really love, the fact that when there's that negative chatter, that you talk to yourself, right? So you question those things, you reframe those comments, because and this is the point that I think is the salient point here, that when that happens, we're just telling ourselves a story, right? That's all it is. It's not rooted in fact, right? There's unconscious bias. There's all types of information that we're pulling in that we're trying to draw all these correlations together, but the reality is it's not fact. So when you question it, when we question that negative self-talk, and we're in a position where we can learn to reframe it, where we can ask ourselves better questions, be able to take a pause and say, Leah, is that true? Now, come on. You've done that before. You've accomplished that before. Look at what you've been able to do. We just look at things differently. And when we can recreate that storyline, change the pattern, interrupt the negative self-talk, when it comes up again, and it will, but when it comes up again, the impact of it isn't quite as great, right? Because we're changing it. We're changing that story. So thank you for sharing that. I love the way that you provided that great insight. So you created the gold standard. I look at this as a set of principles that can really help us all reach our full potential. Please share with our audience what the gold standard is, how that breaks down, and give us an example in each of those categories, please.
Yeah, so the gold standard is an acronym that I was thinking about, when we won gold. I mean, there were obviously a lot of things in play individually as a team, but what were some core values that we all held that I was able to live out and see myself reach the top in the world in my sport? And so G stands for goal oriented, O stands for overcoming obstacles, so the perseverance piece, L stands for leadership, and D stands for dedication and drive. And so, when I think of the gold standard, I think of like I made Team USA and everything was about gold. Our expectations, how we walked, how we talked, how we took the field, how we carried ourselves, the belief we had. And when you built off of other people that have that standard, I mean, it was just next level, no matter how young or how old, no matter what position you played, everybody had this belief that we were the best, we were going to become the best as a unit, and we kept our eyes. So that goal part, that vision, when you are so clear, I just know that anybody who has reached the highest level, they have a vision. Elon Musk had a vision, and he was going to figure out a way when everybody else says it cannot be done. He's like, yes, it will. And I'm going to find a way. He probably has had more mistakes and learned more lessons than anyone else, but look at what he's been able to do. And so knowing that vision. So when I got even to University of Arizona, I saw the power of this because I came into a team that had just won their first ever national championship unexpectedly. And so now we're kind of on this stage, but it was like, no, this is the expectation, not just we're a good team, we're going to have fun, let's try. Other teams, their goal is literally to try to make playoffs. Other teams, it's to make the World Series. Ours was to win, and win it all. And when you build that belief, so goals, knowing where you want to end up. Oh, perseverance. We're all going to face hard times. We've been talking about this, belief and things that keep people. Challenges. When you can use challenges to your advantage, when you can embrace change, go through hard times, but figure out the lesson. And one of the things our Olympic coach would say to us, or he said, when I see you Olympians, the difference every one of you has, even over great college players, this next level is everything is about finding a solution. So when you go through problem perseverance, what's the solution? And those that are the quickest to do that, as a hitter, you had to make an adjustment pitch to pitch. You didn't want to wait a whole inning or a game. It's too late. So quick adjustments, what's the solution? And when you focus on that, I've seen that in my own life. I might want to complain, but is that going to give a solution? No. So forget that part, move on. Okay. And then L, the leadership piece, every successful team, group, organization, company, whatever it is, needs to have quality leadership. And great leaders build other leaders, right? They don't just have followers, but they build other leaders. And our coach was very big on us. He would talk to us and he would say, you're a leader and here's how. And it built you up to say, that's right. I want to take this and I'm going to take pride in that, how I approach everything. So the gold standard was how you carry yourself, and the example you set needs to be one that everyone else can follow. That is quality leadership. And then dedication and drive. I believe that's the core action piece. We can talk about all these great things. You can have a goal and a vision. You can, go through hard times. But if you don't have a good plan, and great leaders make the plan, they lay out the best plans, I will say. And we had a plan, we had a purpose, we had a building up and a building upon throughout the year, but we had to put in the work. And that alone, again, so some people might know where they want to go. They might want it. They might really want it. But who will do the work? Who will keep pressing on, keep staying resilient? And so there's those pieces of showing up every single day, back to that consistency and working on those pieces. So I just believe the gold standard is the standard that is the best version of ourselves in every aspect. And for me personally, I want it in my marriage and in my, my family life with my children. I want to be the best mom I can be. I want to go out, and when I'm helping coach, I've been doing some fun coaching with Israel's junior national team. I want to be the best coach, even though I'm not on the field every single day. When I'm with them, I'm like, what's the best version? How can I make them the best versions of themselves? I want the gold standard to be something where you walk around and people are like, okay, I want more of that. What does she have that I'm missing? And so I believe the gold standard, it's not so much about talent as much as it is about those intangibles of work ethic, attitude, teamwork, like those types of core values of that is what makes the world better, right? Like unity. I just because we just recently had the situation with Damar Hamlin from the Bills, I just was like, man, you really saw humanity in that moment, because what happened was through all division, and you have two teams fighting, and they're in the top in the NFL, but in one moment it was like, no, this is the priority, and we are one. We're one human race, and we can come together. And every single person was praying and supporting and thinking of their family and wanting him to live. And a miracle happened. And I love that. So that's the gold standard. I think we saw when Damar Hamlin that happened, that is the gold standard.
That is so brilliant. And I love your use of that word unity. It truly is a beautiful word. And imagine if we can take that same sense of unity that was applied in that situation that you just described, and if we can use that and apply that in other areas, imagine what can happen. Imagine what you can create. It's just, it's incredible to think about when people come together with a common focus, common thoughts, bringing diverse ideas together, yet in a unified fashion. Anything is possible. Literally anything is possible. I appreciate you sharing about the gold standard. And I want to ask you about your podcast as well, the gold standard. So first of all, congratulations on the success that you've had with the podcast thus far. I know that that's going to continue to rise. You've already reached a top-rated podcast. And that doesn't just happen, right? You talk about consistency. You understand the importance of consistency, and that applies in all areas. And it absolutely applies in the world of podcasting as well. So speak about your podcast for a moment. What is the primary mission of the podcast, and how often does the podcast come out? And for all of our listeners, where can they go to be able to listen to your podcast?
Yes, it's called the Gold Standard Podcast with Leah Amico, and it's on all platforms, all podcast platforms, so Spotify and Apple and all the different places you can listen to podcasts. And it actually is coming out 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We have episodes now. Trying to catch up to people like you, Jay. I got a late start, and it actually has already morphed a little bit. We launched in May. Worked with a company. I was sponsored by Major Media League, which is an organization that's trying to create an app for athletes. Love the idea behind just helping these high school and college athletes to be able to build a brand as much as possible to help support them, to say, hey, with the whole name, image, and likeness. So they supported it. So in the very beginning, how it started was kind of featuring high profile athletes. We interviewed a number of my Olympic teammates because it was called the gold standard. And my goal originally, I had a former NBA player and a current player who has spent time in MLB, was in AAA this past season, sharing. My Olympic coach came on. And so that idea is I wanted to really talk to these people who have not only succeeded in the sporting realm, that's what it started with, athletes, but also off the field. A number of my teammates, one went on to just be a very successful firefighter, another one with ESPN, and just breaking down barriers and making new paths. And Jessica Mendoza, my Olympic teammate with ESPN, and doing stuff with Major League Baseball. And just fun to hear how these core components have literally led to success in all these different areas. And so I wanted to highlight, what are those core values? Because again, that's within everybody's grasp and power. Yeah, we had it on a softball field because we had a talent and a drive and we pushed ourselves. But when you see it relate to that next level and the next steps outside of your sport, okay, there's something there that we all should be, listening to and hearing, because it's those things that lead to success and opportunities, at that kind of elite level. And so that's how it started. But at Rise and Record with Brandon T. Adams, the event in Nashville that Jay and I were supposed to meet at, but it just didn't work out this past year. I ended up meeting John Lee Dumas, and he gave me a little advice. And actually, I took his advice and I switched pretty quickly. And he is a podcast guru. So I think when you get advice from one of the best, then I think it's very wise to say, does that align with your mission and values? And so when he asked what my values were, and my goals as the gold standard, and to, kind of break into the realm of working with more businesses and to, open those opportunities up, he said, I think, the idea of interviewing athletes is great, but when people come and they want to hear more of your wisdom, they're not going to be able to hear that much. So he said, what is your end goal? And I love that question, because I ask people that, right, when I'm helping and working with others. And so that's when I shifted. So he also said, I think it needs to be more than once a week. And that would have been really hard to do 3 a week with different people and trying my schedule alone. I travel a lot. I speak, I do, I travel all the time. And so and when he said that, it was almost like this weight was lifted off my shoulder of like, I can do this. Okay. And so every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, short, 5 to 15 minutes. That's all it is. Just tips that I believe are just core values, stories from my Olympics story. I was taping one of my podcasts today, and it was the story about when our softball team went on to Oprah. We were on the Oprah show, and what, I kind of took away from that. So things like that are just like stories from, what I got to experience. I got to share about the White House too on one of these, but those types of things, of experiences that I had, all because I fell in love with a sport that has a bat and a ball in it.
Amazing. So we will link to the podcast in the show notes. We also have all of your social handles. We'll make sure we link to those as well. For those that are watching and listening right now, when Leah mentioned that she launched her podcast in May, depending on when you're listening to this, we are talking about May of 2022. Also, another reference that was brought up for those of you who may not know. So John Lee Dumas is the host of a very, very popular entrepreneurial and business podcast called Entrepreneurs on Fire, and has built a business around that. So check that one out as well. So Leah, as we are wrapping up our conversation, and this conversation will continue because I know that you are just the kind of person. You're an amazing human being. You've got a great spirit. I love your energy, and I know that we will stay connected and have another conversation here at some point, because I also want to hear about Oprah, the White House, and also keep up to date on all the other amazing things that you're doing. But before I ask my final question to you, I'm curious, what are 1 to 2 bigger questions that you're asking yourself right now?
I think I'm just asking myself, like, I have goals and I have a vision board. Actually, like, I knew in the past what I wanted to do in here, but I put it onto a vision board. And so I'm kind of asking myself, like, what am I willing to do and commit to and sacrifice for? Because I knew for the Olympics to reach that level, what that took. I mean, that was the priority. I missed weddings and birthdays and funerals with Team USA. That it was the priority. And so I still have boys that are in high school, and I'm not done being mom every day yet. And so what I'm trying to really ask myself right now is, I have goals but what is kind of the timing for those goals? Because, I know the power of, again, committing and discipline and being dedicated, but I also know the importance of keeping those priorities the priorities. And so I'm really I'm weighing that. I'm asking myself to really be honest, because it's okay if some of those things still get pushed out a little bit, but I'm working towards them. And I got to give myself grace, because I don't know, as an athlete, you're an Olympian, you're a perfectionist, you want it yesterday. So I'm really trying to just be honest and say it is okay if it takes a little bit of time. I did not make the Olympic team, when I was 18. It was a couple years later when I got a little more experience.
Very good. Keep asking those questions and the answers will appear to you. So here is my final question to you. What is the most difficult decision that you've had to make in the pursuit of who you've become?
I don't even know if I have an answer for that. Um, it's hard, because I feel like when people will say, "Oh, let's talk about adversity or different things that were hard you went through," I'm always like, even though I know there were things, and in those moments they felt super big, but I look back and I'm like, no, because I got through them, and you turned that positive spin on it. And so I don't know that I can think of anything. You stumped me.
That's okay. Then I'm going to ask you something else.
Okay, ask me a different question.
What is a challenge that you'd like to leave our audience with?
My challenge is to set a goal for yourself that not only excites you, but scares you a little. Because what I'm finding, I challenge people to this, because that's where I'm seeing this turmoil comes. But in a sense, I think we become stronger and better for it when we go through some of that hard stuff. And I just encourage people, because what I really think, myself included, I think there's things we have inside that we're like, I would just love to do this thing. But there's something that holds us back. There's something locking us up and keeping us from. So I challenge people, that thing that you've thought about, if only, if I could, I would say, take one step towards making that happen, and put that down on paper. Put that goal down on paper and take one step.
You heard it right from Leah Amico. Leah, thank you so very much for the conversation today. Thank you for joining us on Business Minds Coffee Chat. I am grateful to you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your insights, bringing your authentic energy, and just being the amazing human being that you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jay. It was an honor.
It is my pleasure. And for all of you, thank you so very much for watching and for listening. And would you do us a favor? Please take a moment to subscribe, rate the show, and leave us a review. We would love to hear what you thought about this particular episode. That goes a long way. And to enjoy more episodes, all you need to do is visit jscherbusinessconsulting.com, click on the podcast button. And until next time, keep learning and growing. Check out the Gold Standard Podcast with Leah Amico, and we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, everybody.
Jay Scherr.
Jay Scherr. Business Consultant.
Jay Scherr Business Consulting.